Now that we've got our task list component working, kind of, it's time to make it actually work. And what we need to do to make that happen is to wire this up so that when we load our initial list of tasks, it's not using this static data here. It actually reaches out to the Spring Boot application and gets its data from there. So to do that, the first thing we're going to do is kind of get rid of this data in ng-on-init, and we'll save that out. And we need to create a service class to go ahead and centralize our business logic and where we're going to go fetch our data from. So to do so, I'm going to create a new class here. I'm going to call this task.service.ts. And all we're going to do here is we're going to export a class called task service. And in this class, we're going to have a constructor. And then we need to start building this out. So the first thing that we're going to need is a method to go ahead and grab our data, to fetch our data. So we're just going to call this get tasks. And in here, we need to reach out to Spring Boot and get our list of tasks. So to do so, we actually need another component from Angular, the HTTP component. And to do so, we're going to use some dependency injection here to get that. So we're going to have a variable called HTTP, and it's of type HTTP. And we're going to import that from Angular. So there's that. Now, anytime that we use dependency injection in our service, we do need to add another decorator here, and that's at injectable. And so we'll go ahead and pull that in from Angular as well. So far, so good. So in our get task method, we're going to need to reach out to our API. So to do so, we're actually going to call this .http.get, and then we're going to call /API/tasks. If you remember from our Spring Boot side of things, that was the URL to go ahead and grab our list of tasks. Now this isn't going to work just yet, and we'll talk through this in a second. We're actually going to pull in a map from the RxJS library. So basically when we get our response, which is actually going to be an observable, we're actually going to turn that into JSON. So we can do response is equal to response.json. And that looks pretty good to me. So basically this is returning a observable from the RxJS library. If you're not familiar with that, it's time we probably start looking into that. We're going to use observables a lot, so please do catch up on that. So we're going to return that to our wherever we call this from. So what we're going to do is back in our task list component, instead of creating static tasks, what we want to do is actually call our service now and get that list of tasks. So what we're going to do is return this we need to go ahead and do the same thing here. We need to get our task service that we just created into our task list component, and to do so, we're going to say task service, and that's of type task service. We need to do one more thing to make this happen. Back in our app module, we need to provide this, so task service, and we're going ahead and import that as well. So I think that's going to work. So now what we want to do is this task service get tasks. So again, that's not going to do anything just yet. We actually need to call the subscribe method here. So let's go ahead and call subscribe. And in subscribe here, we're basically going to get a list of tasks back, and that's going to be an array. And so what we want to do is actually set the value of this .task to what we got back from the service. So that should do us. Let's just go ahead and make sure, in case we get any errors, we can log that out. Okay, so I think that should work. Again, this isn't going to work just yet, and I want to show you why. Let's go ahead and go to the browser, reload this. Okay, so we're not actually running. I'm actually going to bear you the sight of having to watch this, but so if we start this up right now, this isn't actually going to work. I might as well show you. So let's go ahead and ng serve this up. And I just want to talk through this while this is starting up. So this is actually going to reach out to our task service, and our task service is actually going to reach out to our API to get the data. Now the problem with this is it's actually reaching out to /API/tasks, which is a relative path. And on this particular domain, that would be localhost 4200. Now we could put our full URL in here, but a couple of problems. We're still going to have cross-site origin problems. So you're going to have problems reaching across different domains to get that data. And you really don't want to hard code in full URL paths there in that case anyway. So let's just look at this and then we'll look at the solution. So if we go ahead and refresh this, it's going to basically get us a 404. So it's not calling that. And again, if I put in the full path localhost 8080 here, we're going to have some core issues, some cores issues there anyway. So I just want to look at a quick solution to this. So anytime you're working on two different domains here, which we are on localhost 4200 and then localhost 8080, we can fix this real easily. So I've created a new file in here called proxy-conf.json. And all this does is say anytime you reach out to /API, I want you to have the target of localhost 8080. So basically that's going to allow us to kind of proxy all of our requests over to Spring Boot. Now to make this happen, we just need to go into our package.json. And so here we have this start. So if we were to run npm start, all that's really calling is ngserve. And we need to kind of fix this up a little. So we want to say, when you do that, I also need you to call the argument proxy config and pass it in our proxy-conf.json. So now, if we go ahead and stop this, instead of running ngserve, we're going to run npm start, which you'll see is going to call ngserve, use the command line argument proxy config, and then pass in our proxy-conf.json. So now when we load this up and we call our task service /API/tasks, it's going to call our Spring Boot app, which is right now running. So this should work out. Let's go ahead and refresh this. And there's our list of tasks. So I know there was a few things there, but we worked through actually replacing the static data that we were using in the component. And we did so by reaching out in the ng-on-init method to our task service. And in our task service, we're basically calling our Spring Boot app to get our data. So I think we'll leave it at that in this one. And what we'll do is we'll come back and fix up the add task component. So we're going to add a couple methods to our task service now and fix that up. And I think when that's done, we should be pretty close to wrapping up this task application. So with that, let's move on to the next one.